Assistant Administrator for EPA's Office of Air and Radiation. I want to thank Kenworth of Indianapolis and Palmer Trucks for hosting us here today. This is an amazing and exciting day for the country. But I'll keep this short. Without further ado, I have the great privilege and honor to introduce my boss, the 17th Administrator of the Environmental Protection Agency, Leigh Zeldin.
Thank you to Aaron. It's great to be here with all of you for what is a very big deal. It's a very big announcement. Just to put some perspective of the magnitude of what we're here to announce today, if finalized, today's announcement would amount to the largest deregulatory action in the history of the United States. It's also great to be here specifically at Kenworth, grateful to our hosts, joined by Secretary Chris Wright, Governor Braun, Congressman Baird, and so many other leaders from the state level, the local level, leaders in industry, and we couldn't possibly find a better reason for all of us to be getting together for today's announcement. Now, there might be some coverage from reporters nationally that would like to twist what we are announcing here today. I would ask, would you want the administrator of the EPA to be ignoring the Supreme Court decisions in West Virginia versus EPA, Michigan versus EPA, ignoring the decisions in Loper Bright? Should the Environmental Protection Agency be ignoring the major policy doctrine? Do you really think that the EPA should be coming up with all of the many mental leaps that went into this endangerment finding, that took a section of the Clean Air Act, 202, and put an extremely creative and unprecedented spin on it? See, some would like to simplify what the endangerment finding is by just saying carbon dioxide endangers human health and the environment and welfare. Now, that is a very oversimplified statement to the point that it's just not accurate when you look at what the endangerment finding did. Now, I'm going to follow the law and making sure I don't prejudge outcome of this rulemaking. We are going to have a public comment period, one that has not taken place on the endangerment finding over the course of the last decade and a half. We want to hear from the American public to finalize a regulation that not only proposes to rescind the endangerment finding, but all greenhouse gas emissions that followed on light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles. It is important for us to understand that what the EPA did was many mental leaps in trying to creatively interpret Section 202 of the Clean Air Act. They said that carbon dioxide, when mixed with several other well-mixed gases, some of which, by the way, aren't even emitted from mobile sources. So in doing this review, it was specifically for mobile sources. And the EPA said that carbon dioxide, when mixed with a bunch of well-mixed gases, many of which aren't even emitted from mobile sources, that contributes to global climate change. They didn't say causes, they say contributes. Now you might ask how much. They don't say how much. The amount is north of zero. We know that much. And then they say that climate change endangers public health and welfare. Now if you're following all of the mental leaps there, they then rely on assumptions that ended up not being true. They ended up making predictions about the science that in many respects were not just pessimistic, they turned out not to be true. And for the first time ever, the EPA in an effort to combat global climate change end up deciding to reach this endangerment finding and then put forward trillions of dollars of regulations. Regulations that hit mobile sources, stationary sources, airplanes. Now, where did this power come from, one might ask? Well, some don't want to ask. And I'll tell you, when the Supreme Court ruled in Loper Bright, overturning the Chevron doctrine and making it clear that I, as Administrator of EPA, that agencies of this federal government do not have the ability to just creatively come up with our own law. We do not have that power on our own to decide as an agency that we are going to combat global climate change because we give ourselves that power. We will follow the law. Congress wants to amend Section 202 of the Clean Air Act and tell us that they want us to be regulating the heck out of carbon dioxide, methane, and these other greenhouse gases. Then we'll follow the law. And in the meantime, we're going to follow the law. The economic consequences of the electric vehicle mandates that followed, all of the added costs to light, medium, and heavy-duty vehicles, the practical application of all of those new regulations leading to added costs, which leads to Americans getting older vehicles that actually don't operate as efficiently as the newer ones because people can't afford it. Now, last November, the American public spoke. They elected President Trump, President of the United States. That was the will of the American public. And when they voted, they asked for, demanded that an agency like the EPA would be cognizant of their economic concerns, that all agencies would be applying common sense, that we at EPA must choose to both protect the environment and grow the economy, that it's not a binary choice. And we at the Trump EPA, under the leadership of President Trump, choose both, protect the environment and grow the economy. We'll go through a public comment period. We'll see what the American public has to say about everything that we put out right now on all of this. Now, one approach to it could follow agencies of the past and say, well, we just know best. There'll be no public comment period. That's what they've done over the last decade and a half. We could say, we're going to ignore the Supreme Court decisions in all of those cases that have come out. We could say, well, we'll just make up our own law where there's a ambiguity in statute. We'll ignore the economic consequences. We'll ignore the bad assumptions. We will ignore what proved not just to be pessimistic views of what was going to happen. We'd be ignoring what turned out to be inaccurate. But that's not the decision we make today in putting out this proposed rule. We at the Trump EPA have been delivered a mandate from this president, most importantly from the American public. President Trump called me on Sunday, November 11th, in the morning, asking me to take this position to be the administrator of EPA. President Trump wants us to do our part to help advance for all Americans clean air, land, and water. It gets to the core mission of the EPA of protecting human health and the environment. I'm a conservative Republican who wants to be a great steward of the environment. And I have found that conservatives and others across ideologies, that Republicans and others across political parties have so much that we all can agree on to be great stewards of the environment. We're not going to ignore how emissions have been down. We're not going to ignore how American innovation has been on the rise. And President Trump said on that call that morning that he also wants us to be cognizant of the demand of the American public as it relates to the economy. And that's why powering the great American comeback also includes unleashing energy dominance. It includes advancing cooperative federalism and permitting reform, making America the AI capital of the world, and proudly and unapologetically doing our part to protect and bring back American auto jobs. I apologize to those members of my team who did a great job preparing great remarks that were in front of me, and to whomever on the team spent the hours getting it right, my apologies, but this one hits close to the heart for all of us. The last thing I'll say is this. President Trump, he called me about a week ago to talk about tailpipe emissions. He was talking about the American auto industry. He was talking about American auto companies and wanting us to do our part to apply that common sense, to be cognizant of what that Trump mandate means. But we also have been focusing on the little things. See, our next speaker, Chris Wright, and I have had many conversations talking about topics like the flow coming out of a shower nozzle, the flow of gas out of a portable gas container, the start-stop feature that should be called a start-stop feature every time you come to a stop sign or a red light, as I've heard from so many Americans complaining about it. Just like they complain about how it takes 5 minutes to pour gas out of something that should take 45 seconds. We'll continue to have these conversations about refrigerants and so much more. Why? Because not just doing big things is what the American public demands of us, but also doing the small things to fix everything. Our next speaker, they call him Secretary Wright. They call me Administrator. It doesn't matter what these titles are that they give us. Secretary Wright will introduce the governor, and we'll hear from others with titles. The only title that matters are titles like being a husband or a title like being a father. Selfless service is about all of us being here today for this cause, to put out this proposed rule to the American public, to respect these decisions that have come out of the Supreme Court, to respect the actual law of Section 202 of the Clean Air Act, and to heed the economic demands of the American public who call for actions like this proudly and unapologetically. And without any further ado, our next speaker, my colleague on the National Energy Dominance Council, the Vice Chair of the National Energy Dominance Council, Secretary of Energy, Chris Wright.